Hi, my name is Olivia Stecina, and I chose the economic lens.
I'm Madi Sousa, and I picked the political lens.
I'm Katelin Hall, and I chose the cultural lens.
Imagine this scenario. You're new in town, and while you're out exploring, you see an advertisement for a bakery. Fresh cookies, it says, and you light up. You have been craving cookies for a solid month because you can't bake at all, and you have no friends in this new town. So, naturally, you drive on over. It smells a little bit like raisins, but you continue. You float in, all aglow, to meet a smiling cashier.
Hi, can I have a chocolate chip cookie?
I'm sorry, we don't sell chocolate chip cookies.
But your sign said you sold cookies.
We only sell the raisin cookies.
But this is a bakery, how could you not sell chocolate chip cookies?
We only sell the raisin cookies, and you should feel bad for wanting chocolate chip cookies.
Congratulations! You just discovered what it's like to visit a crisis pregnancy center.
A Crisis Pregnancy Center, or a CPC, is an organization that offers free services to women, such as free sonograms, pregnancy tests, STI tests, counseling, and baby products. Many CPCs advertise at varied options to patients seeking assistance during uncomfortable situations.
Sounds nice, right? Well, in actuality, CPCs are nearly all religious organizations run by unqualified volunteers who refuse to provide options such as abortion and forms of contraceptive, and even make putting a baby up for adoption difficult. And because of lack of medical staff, many aren't even legally allowed to provide birth control.
According to the Waxman study, out of 25 crisis pregnancy centers that were investigated, only 87% provided some form of inaccurate or misleading information. The cause of this is either religious bias or the fact that many of the employees are actually volunteers with little to no medical experience. A lot of crisis pregnancy centers teach at public schools as part of the curriculum. Out of all 50 states, only 2 are required to not provide any sort of religious content. California is the only state that passed a bill forcing crisis pregnancy centers to provide accurate information as well as providing a medical license.
So, the First Amendment protects an American's right to practice whatever religion they please. So, if you want to use faith as a means of helping people, that's fine. But the First Amendment also separates church and state, meaning that if you have a center that uses faith, then the government can't support that center. But somehow, CPCs still receive millions of dollars of federal funding every year. Our solution to this obvious entanglement? Cut all federal funding to CPCs and redirect that money to organizations like Planned Parenthood, who can offer comprehensive education and care without any religious constraint.
Okay, this graph gives examples of religions that are typically against abortion and how they morally view abortion. These religions would influence one's personal decision, thereby influencing the overall advertising of CPCs, which is then leading to bias centers. The Constitution of the United States sets the foundational law of the country. Found in the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause prohibits the federal government from making law respecting an establishment of religion. As mentioned before, these pregnancy centers are religious and are misleading women while receiving federal dollars. These grants are promoting religion and favoring an anti-choice rhetoric, which is violating the Establishment Clause. These grants given to CPCs are unconstitutional and is a legal violation. In the court case Roe v. Wade of 1973, the Supreme Court ruled abortion constitutional due to the right of privacy that allows a woman to choose. This shows there needs to be a discontinuation of federal grants given to CPCs. Abortion was found to be legal and a right of personal liberty. The federal funds are infringing upon this right, and a woman's constitutional right is being limited by the governmental funds. Following this case, Harris v. McRae in 1980 challenged the Hyde Amendment, which prohibited federal funds given to abortion clinics in states that practice Medicaid. McRae claimed the Hyde Amendment violated the First Amendment right. This case had the precedent idea of religious centers advertising abortion. This showed the unconstitutionality of religious dissuasion and the advertisement of abortion. This is violating the Establishment Clause due to the fact of religious funding.
The unfortunate truth is that while CPCs are given ample opportunity to thrive by the U.S. government, Planned Parenthood has had to fight hard and often to maintain the funding that keeps them afloat. CPCs get their government money in various ways. This map shows the states that sell Choose Life license plates and which of those states allow for CPCs to profit off of them. 15 states allow for that taxpayer money to go towards funding CPCs, including Ohio, which has also been found to use a temporary assistance for needy families money to fund CPCs. CPCs also take advantage of Title X and Title V grants. These block grants are designed to support family planning and education centers, with Title V grants specifically aiding Hispanic Americans. Yet, CPCs that acknowledge that their only family planning tools are STI testing, ultrasounds, and education and support can leech funds off of these grants, which could be going to Planned Parenthood that offers a much larger array of services besides abortion, including comprehensive sex ed, HIV testing, men's health care, LGBTQ services, life-saving mammograms, and emergency contraception. Think of it this way. Between 2006 and 2008, Florida CPCs received over $3.2 million from the government, which equals about 1% of family planning funds for the entire country, for both Planned Parenthood and CPCs. But it's not just the constant battle over grants that makes Planned Parenthood's job harder. Many government officials have tried to forcefully defund the organization and drive it into the ground. For example, in Wisconsin, between 2011 and 2013, Planned Parenthood lost over $1 million of their federal funding, which forced them to close 4 of their clinics. Former governor of Florida and 2016 Republican presidential candidate Jeb Bush not only forcefully tried to defund Planned Parenthood, but also pushed to get that $3 million for Florida CPCs. When asked why he wanted to defund Planned Parenthood, he said, "I'm not sure we need $500 million for women's health issues." All this happening while interest groups and PACs raised over $100 million for his campaign that ended up being useless when he lost the nomination. Streamlining funding for women's health by preventing the government from supporting costly CPCs when Planned Parenthood offers many more services would be economically advantageous and would allow strides in the fields of women's health as opposed to steps backwards.
The United States needs to cease the funding of religiously affiliated crisis pregnancy centers. However, this has many consequences, and that there is a possibility that these centers could turn into businesses now looking for a profit among many pre-existing agendas. There is also the possibility of these centers disappearing. Places like Planned Parenthood, which helps people without any religious affiliation, need to be considered. This raises an ethical question. Most importantly, it would be very difficult to determine whether a center is really religiously affiliated. If they have any ulterior motives, it would be very strenuous to decide if the facts they are providing really support that.
Okay, the federal funds given to CPCs is unconstitutional and they need to be discontinued. And although there are limitations to this solution, the foundation of law trumps all other arguments.
Not only are these funds unconstitutional, the misleading facts provided also not only affect women and families, but also affects society's views.
Providing these funds to Planned Parenthood is also more economically efficient as they offer many more services and have employees that can perform these services without religious bias. Why fund the bakery that only sells oatmeal raisin cookies when there's one right next door with way better chefs that sells every cookie under the sun? Thank you.
And these are our works cited and one more page.
Okay, thank you. Give me a second to select some defense questions, and I'll be right with you. Olivia, I'd like to start with you. Can you expand and answer the question, what was the strongest counter argument or limitation to the solution that you guys proposed? And why? How did you identify that?
Well, obviously, I think one of the biggest limitations with our solution is that CPCs can help people, and they do. There are plenty of women who the word Planned Parenthood makes them nervous, and if their parents found out that they were going to Planned Parenthood as opposed to Life Choices, the Colorado CPC, then that seems like the easier option. Our solution doesn't take into account the fact that these centers, if they weren't there, that would leave a lot of women empty-handed who feel nervous to go to Planned Parenthood, or their guardians or friends won't let them into Planned Parenthood. Another one of the limitations on the solution is that CPCs also provide services for free, and if they lost their government funding, they might not be able to provide them for free anymore. They might become a business, and obviously that would be a lot worse, because then they would be searching for profit and trying to take money out of these people instead of just trying to prevent them from getting an abortion.
Thank you. Katelin, can you tell me about, describe how the content of the team presentation was changed as a result of your group discussions and working together as a group?
Well, when we first started out, we were mostly focusing on the federal part and how these places, if they're religiously affiliated, they cannot have funds from the government. But then we started looking into it, and we realized that there's a lot of misleading facts that these places provide, and just to support their views. And we realized that this changes a lot of how the culture today is influenced by these places, because they're teaching children as well.
Thank you. And Maddie, lastly, can you talk about, can you give an example of a compelling argument from one of your peers' papers that you decided to exclude from your presentation? And can you tell us why you decided to exclude that argument?
Well, I think one of the arguments that we excluded was specifically how individual CPCs were being funded and how their information is accurate or inaccurate compared to larger organizations like Planned Parenthood. And I think one thing that we excluded from this was numbers about the Waxman study and how they really showed the misleading information and how women and families are being affected by this. And I think if we had included those things about individual or local places, people could have related to this more instead of seeing it as a national issue, and it would have made this topic more understandable to people instead of just talking about money and how it's affecting these places in a legal sense and an economic sense, and how women are being affected. And I think if we talked about local places, people would have seen that there needs to be change in a local environment.
And then, can you answer the second part of that question of, those are good ideas of things that you could have included. What was the limiting factor to you as to why you didn't include them in the presentation?
Well, I think the main issue that we were talking about was the federal funding of these places. And if you talk about local communities and local organizations, it's not a national issue anymore, it is a state issue. And if we were talking about places like Planned Parenthood and these organizations in general, then people could see how these places are being federally funded instead of state funded.
Thank you very much. Let's give him one more round of applause.